Hello, I'm Celia from Celia Self Reflects. Thank you for joining me. Excuse this lighting, it's a bit full frontal, lots of glare. Let's get into today's story. So today's story is going to be a bit full on. Today I'm going to be talking about my journey with depression and all the things that meant for me, all the things mentally that I was going through, and how I've kind of pushed through a bit. I'm doing alright at the moment. And we'll just have a chat around some of that stuff. A little bit of a warning, I'm just going to pop this right here. This talks about some deep things. This talks about some pretty heavy stuff. Right at the end of the video, I'm going to put a bit of a true feelings thing out there, so that you can kind of see how I was feeling. This video has taken me a really long time to do, because every time I thought about sitting down and doing this, I was just like, not today. Anyway, if you are triggered by any of this, skip that part. It's a bit real. If you're interested, go ahead and watch it. That's totally fine. But I just wanted to let you guys know that it gets really deep at the end of this video. Take care of yourself. Do what you need to take care of yourself. So, let's get into today's story. So, my depression had been around for longer than I had realised. I remember going through at least 2 to 3 years, possibly 4 years of just always feeling exhausted. Like, I just felt like I couldn't get enough rest. Like I was in this deficit of rest and sleep, and yeah, I just was exhausted. And I remember saying to people over and over again, I'm just tired. Like, I'm just tired. I'm just tired. I'm just tired. And so the people around me heard that a lot. And I had a friend in particular who could very much see that I wasn't okay, and would kind of prompt me to maybe go into the doctors, or maybe just do something, but I had all these distractions in my life. So I just graduated uni, I just, started my first job, I'd met the man of my dreams, I was then going through the process of planning a wedding. Like, I had all these things that kept me busy, so I just continued with my story of I'm just tired, I just need a rest. And I remember getting married. It was incredible, it was a really cool day, and we went on what we call a mini moon, where the following week, the week after our wedding, we got away just so I could have this rest that I felt like I needed. And it was a beautiful holiday, but I still felt exhausted. And at that time I was like, I've been through a lot, I can understand, I'll just, I've got nothing on now, so I'll just rest. And I just got deeper and deeper into this exhaustion. And so for our big honeymoon, my husband and I had planned to go to Europe and do a little 2 or 3 weeks, I think it was, in Europe. And I was still waiting to, I remember thinking, this is what I need. This is what I need, and I'm gonna feel better after this one. And I remember getting back and feeling the same, like feeling really exhausted and really lost. Those are some real feelings. I remember being really disappointed because I thought that I was so looking forward to that fixing me, and being the rest that I needed and all that sort of fun stuff, and it wasn't. So funnily enough, when I came back from my honeymoon, I was going into a workplace course that had been arranged for us, and it was what was called mental health first aid. It was kind of a course to help you recognize and approach people who may be struggling with mental health, and ways in which you can help them, which normally consisted of referring them to either a doctor or a helpline or a whatever you deemed to be really needed for those people in that time. Okay, wait. I'm good. So, I went to this mental health first aid course after my honeymoon, after feeling quite broken from getting back from that, and I was sitting there and they were talking about depression, and they were talking about anxiety, and they talked about lots of different things. They talked about bipolar, schizophrenia, people in huge periods of addiction and things like that. Incredible course. It's available in New Zealand, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone. But I was sitting there and I was like, holy crap, they're talking about me. And it was the first time that I properly realised that there was something more going on than just me needing a sleep. And I remember during one of the breaks, because I kept asking questions about, they were talking about depression in terms of people who can't get out of bed, and people who shut down from life. But I'm sitting there listening and I'm like, they're so spot on with what they're talking about in regards to the other things that I started asking questions about, well, can't you have people who are still fully functioning but just mentally not okay? Can't you have people who are they get up, they do the job, they go through their autopilot of the day and just not be okay? And that's kind of exactly what I was doing. In my mind, I remember I was thinking of me, but I wasn't thinking of me. I was thinking of some of my clients that were displaying these things, because I was thinking about where I could use this new information. And then in one of the breaks, I was about to walk out, and the guy who was taking the course walked up to me and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I just remember being like, "No, I'm so not okay." And it was... Okay. I remember being fearful because I was at this course with my entire set of colleagues. And I remember thinking, these poor bastards think I'm crazy. Okay. Oh, sorry. With my job, there's a lot of I deal with people all day, right? And when I fill out my little form every year to get my annual practicing certificate to do my job, I have to declare if I'm mentally fit. And I remember thinking that I was terrified. I was terrified to admit that I wasn't okay. But at the same time, I knew that I really needed to admit that I wasn't okay. And I remember thinking that I might lose my job. I remember thinking all these things, and there was so much fear. But surrounding me, there was nothing but love. My boss was great. I've been working for him now for 5 years, and we've grown a lot together. Oh, I should have bought my tissues. Oh dear, I should have known. I knew this was gonna happen. Okay. Okay. Sorry. So, I remember there being a lot of fear around, if I admit this, if I admit I have this, am I gonna lose my job? What am I going to do for a job if I lose this one? What am I, and so I had all of these really intrusive thoughts about no longer being good enough. I just started this job that I loved, and then it was possibly going to be taken away from me because now I'm unfit, and at no point was I unfit I believe at no point I was unfit to do my job. But it was just these weird thoughts. And some of that's like perfectionism, and some of that's people pleasing, and all of these things that I've now learned about, to be perfectly honest. So that was that. So that course happened, and then I think it was like a month or two later, I went to my doctor, and she basically diagnosed me with depression. So in getting that diagnosis, it gave me, like, I feel like it gave me power. And I know that sounds really weird, but I had been chasing this invisible rest that I needed for years and not catching up, like not getting to the point where I felt rested, where I felt better, like none of that. And so now with this diagnosis of depression, it was something else that I could focus on that was a bit more tangible. That I didn't need to sleep, my body wasn't tired, my soul was. And I kind of, for me it was really powerful to get that diagnosis. I didn't once see it, well, there were negatives, for sure, but I saw it as beneficial. I really found my diagnosis beneficial. And for sure, there was those moments of grief, and those moments of, how the crap did I get here? Like, Jim Carrey has a quote along the lines, I love the quote, and I can't think of it, I'm going to butcher it, but it's something along the lines of, depression is your soul's way of telling you that it doesn't want to play this avatar anymore. And what I think that means for me is, I'd been trying to be someone else for so long that I actually didn't know who I was anymore. That I was so lost that my soul was screaming for me to come back. And as terrible as that sounds, it's also kind of beautiful that we can trust ourselves. I got a tissue. That we know, that deep down we know when we're not okay. And that if we get better at listening to ourselves, and I'm meaning our true self, like not our head, because often that can be full of almost damaging thoughts, where it's just going and going and going with thoughts, and none of them are necessarily productive. If anything, they can be quite harmful. And that's not us. That's our learnt behaviours. That's the voices of our critics. That's everything that we doubt ourselves for often. And that's not who we really are. That fundamentally we know. And that knowing is behind all of these thoughts. So my doctor was great. She talked to me about medications and things. And I had decided at that stage that I didn't want to pursue medication at that stage. Now, I'm not against medication. I think medication can be extremely helpful. I think it's really important to know that the medication will not fix your problems, but that it can get you to a level, consciously, where you can then do the work yourself. Sometimes you can be so deep in it that you can't even do the work. And medication, I think, brings you to that level where you can then do the work. And depression it requires work. It's not something you're just going to get over. Like I said, it's that invitation to get to know yourself. It's that invitation to get to know your life and to take what I believe are steps to being your truer self. And that often it's when we get away from that true self that our souls start screaming. It sounded really dramatic, but you know what I mean, like, so don't, if you're going through something like this, and if you're in a really big state of just not being okay, first of all, know that that's okay. Get yourself some help. Go to your GP, or your doctor, see if they recommend medication first. Don't just go asking for it. But just know that it's an option. It's a short-term option, and it's to get you in a better place so that you can do the work. Do not expect the medication to fix you by itself. You have to put in some work. Again, 100% my opinion. So shortly after I went to the doctor and decided I didn't want the medication and I was going to do the work, I was like, okay, great, I'm going to find a therapist. And then boom, lockdown. And I was locked in my house with my mother and my husband, because I was staying with my mum at the time. And I remember being like, what do I do? What do I do? And I was looking at different, like, online options, and at that time, that was that very first lockdown back in March of 2020. And I remember thinking, what do I do? Like, and for me, I turned, funnily enough, to social media. I had tried looking for online places and stuff, and it just kind of wasn't available at that stage. This was new, this was uncertain, and there just wasn't the processes in place at that point that I could find. There may very well have been out there. And so I turned to social media, and I found I was just trying to educate myself as much as possible. And that's when I started to come across, like, the Jim Carrey quote, and other little quotes and things that kind of resonated with me. So some of the pages I came across was, I found Dr. Nicole Lepera, first on YouTube, and then followed her on Instagram. So the holistic psychologist, that's what that was. I found Create the Love, who's Mark Groves, who's a relationship sort of specialist. Not just relationships in terms of romantic, but in terms of the relationship you have with yourself, your relationship you have with your family dynamic, all that sort of stuff, which I found super helpful with that initially breaking things down for, like, why I believed certain things and all that sort of stuff. One of my favourite follows on Instagram was Miss Tabitha Brown. Her page was just so full of joy, and I just remember watching video after video after video just because she had this beautiful energy. There's so many more, but, like, one of the best things I did was obviously finding those resources and trying to educate myself, but I really started to just diversify my feed, because I was on Instagram all the time, it was lockdown, I was just wasting time. Lots of scrolling, and I started to follow certain pages that I found inspirational, that I found helpful, that I found joyful, and for me that was really, really important, and I think made a huge difference. Now, I'm not saying that Instagram and YouTube are going to heal you. I was in a position where I couldn't reach out for help otherwise at this stage. Partly because I couldn't find the resources, partly because it was too much hard work, and at the time my mental capacity was low. But instead of dwelling on it and being like, well, I'm stuck at home, what am I going to do? I took that time to really start getting to know myself, to take that invitation of, hey, you're not okay, what can we do about it? And I just did start looking through things and finding what made sense to me, what I aligned with, and eventually I got to the point where things that I found a bit confronting were usually the things that I needed to look at most. So Mark Groves was great for this. Often his videos are like a big kick in the guts, and it's in a really positive way though. If you get triggered by something, sometimes it's an invitation. Sometimes a trigger is an invitation to be like, hey, this part of you needs healing, or this part of you is not okay. And I found myself being triggered by a lot of the things he said, and so in that I instead just went deeper and just got interested, and a lot of the time I ended up having really cool breakthroughs. And that's the case with a lot of the stuff, but the diversifying of the feed was so helpful in just changing my worldview and sort of cleaning it up and just doing things that were going to inspire me. which is what I needed at that stage. I needed a safe place to be inspired. I didn't need a place to compare myself to others. I didn't need a place to try and keep up with the Joneses. I needed a safe place. And so that's what a big thing that I did. I'm going to pop a whole bunch of the Instagram handles and stuff down in the description of this video if you want to give any of them a follow. I highly recommend. But at the same time, do you. Like, different things inspire all of us. That's one of the best things about the world, is we're all so different. But have a look around and see what inspires you, and just follow those pages and fill your feed up with goodness. Once we were out of that lockdown, I think that lockdown was like 6 weeks or something, I then looked at getting a therapist and started going to therapy sort of just once a week to begin with, and it was great. Like, it was so helpful. And I remember those instances where I felt most triggered, where I was willing to say stuff you and walk out the door. Those were the gems. Like, I remember walking in and he said, I think he asked me a question along the lines of like, Celia, tell me why you're here. And I was like, well, I'm not okay, so I'm here. I'm here to get better. And he said, what does that mean for you? What does that look like for you? What do you want out of these sessions? And my instant kind of defense, I guess, was, why do you think I'm here? What do you think I'm here for? Like, why do you walk into a therapist's office? It's because I'm not okay. That was my defensive response internally. I'm far too much of a people pleaser to say that sort of thing out loud. But in sitting, like, after I left that session, I remember going home and being like, what do I want? What do I want? I'm paying these people money. I can't expect them to just magically fix me. What do I want? And I started actually questioning what I wanted. For the first time in a really long time. Because I had never been big on my radar. Everyone else was first. Everyone else is first. And I'd probably say that that's been one of the biggest learnings of this whole depression journey is, again, I was so far removed from who I was that I didn't know who I was anymore. And some of my best healing has come from getting to know who I am. Why I have certain beliefs, how they were molded, how I can change them. I try and put myself first more, which is so hard because I've had so many years of not doing that. That's really foreign to me, to put myself first. And I remember through the lockdowns, my one thing, it's all about celebrating the small things, right? So the first thing I have to do in the morning is get up and have a drink of water. No excuses. That's the one thing that I do for myself before anyone else, first thing in the morning. Through the lockdowns, all I had to achieve in a day was to get out of my pajamas. And I really tried to celebrate that little thing. And I know that sounds really silly, but in those moments, when you're really dark on things, you just have to celebrate the small stuff. I started drawing, and painting, and just trying to do things where I could be a bit creative and have a bit of an outlet. But really, really learning to put myself first. And in that, I think Mark Groves and the holistic psychologist, I think that's why I go on about them so much, because I really learnt so much about codependency, people pleasing, and where these came from. Looking back into my childhood and seeing how certain behaviours were learnt behaviours and how I carried them through into my adulthood even though they weren't serving me anymore. I went through quite an existential crisis around my job because the depth of my codependency and the depth of my people pleasing was so strong that I literally got into a job where I was taking care of other people all day. And I think part of my depression was through burnout. I think I was literally trying to make everyone else better without a single care for myself. I wasn't eating properly, I wasn't exercising, like, it literally was all for everyone else. Which wasn't anything new. I'd been doing that for most of my life. I'd been putting everyone else first. And having to learn to put myself first was really confronting. I remember it was really sad to have the realization that I don't even know what it's like. I don't even know what it looks like to take care of myself first. And that's, I think, fundamentally been where most of my growth and most of my health has come back from, is learning to take care of myself. This is an everyday practice and it's still a struggle. I find when I get stressed or overwhelmed, I revert straight back to those patterns of trying to micromanage everyone else and trying to fix everyone else and all that sort of thing. I have to make sure that I choose my job for myself every day, and that I go to work for me every day. Not because people are relying on me, not because I need the money, not because of all these other excuses that I'd come up with, but that I just genuinely love my job and I choose to do it for me. And everything in my life that I do at the moment, I have to choose for me. And if it's not for me, then I really have to question why I'm doing it and if it's the best thing. And for a people pleaser, an immense people pleaser, to say no to someone or to put your hand up and say that you're not okay was one of the most challenging things that I've ever had to do. To stand in my power and take a stand for me over someone else, it's been the hardest thing. And yet, where most of my healing has come from. So you kind of have to, I spent years being uncomfortable anyway, so the idea of being more uncomfortable was like, meh, whatever. But through it, I've found my path back to a bit more happiness and a bit more joy. I have gratitude again. And I'm still very much learning how to take care of myself. And that's going to be a long-term thing, but it's kind of exciting. And there's been a few hurdles in the road to really challenge me on that. The universe has been like, okay, hey, so you've gotten good at these things, but now I'm just going to throw you this curveball. Can you still put yourself first? And dang, it's been tough. It's been really tough, but I'm getting there. So those are just a couple of the things that I have done to help myself with my depression. Like I said, I'm in a pretty good place at the moment. I definitely feel better than I have in a long time, and it's a real blessing to be able to say. And I just want to soak up that goodness for a while. I think we can achieve something and then move on too quickly onto the next thing, and I don't. I just want to soak in this goodness for a bit and just really enjoy this feeling of gratitude and joy. And yeah. So, thank you so much for watching this far. The next part of the video is kind of like a real feelings part of the video. If you've found this video up to now enough, then that's fine. The next part is a real account of how I was feeling and some of the real feelings that I was having. This can be triggering. If you want to turn off now, that's fine. If you want to watch it, please just turn it off at any stage if you don't feel okay. If you've liked this video, please like it. If you feel like this would be helpful for anyone, or maybe mainly just yourself, it's a bit awkward to share a video like this, but if you feel like it will be helpful, you can share it. Just be easy on yourself. If this has brought up some stuff for you, I highly recommend going and getting some assistance. The best place to start is usually at your doctor. Be okay with admitting that you're not okay, because that's one of the first steps to healing. It's okay to be uncomfortable. And there absolutely is help, and there's absolutely another day where things will get better. Don't lose hope. And if you feel like you're starting to, please reach out. Even if you can't reach out to anyone within your friends or family circle, if that's too confronting, there are emergency helplines, crisis lines in places. Please look them up in your area. You'll be okay. Take one little victory a day, even if it's having a drink of water for yourself, even if it's getting out of your pajamas. And I wish you nothing but love and like all of the goodness. Take care, all the best, careful with the next part of the video, love and light. I'm just going to do a little insert here about, for me, what depression felt like. So, obviously it started with all the constant tiredness and the forever being tired, right? It was this kind of feeling of being lost. And it wasn't even that you wanted someone else to find you, it's just that even you weren't looking. One of the things that upset me most was that there was no joy. Whatever filter had seen joy before it was gone, it was like that was broken. And for me, there was just all of this expectation to just carry on. And when it started to get really bad towards the end, I'd been without joy for a long time. And I'd go through these moments where I felt like a rubber band being pulled. And sometimes I'd go days on days with that rubber band pulled so tight that I was just waiting for it to break. And I was just on that edge of like losing it for a really long time. And it was so hard. It was really hard. It was really hard. And I can't even necessarily say that I had a whole bunch of negative thoughts. There was just nothing. And it was just nothing. And there was no joy, and there was nothing to keep going for. Obviously I did. But it felt so empty and so never-ending. And I was so lucky to be surrounded with people that cared. But when you're in it, when you're deep in it, man, it doesn't feel like there's any other options. It really was like, I wouldn't say that I was having suicidal thoughts, but there were definitely days where I felt like it would be easier to not exist. Not that I wanted to end my life or die, but there was definitely points where there was no point going on. And it was just so hard, and why am I here, and all that sort of stuff. So it was hideous. Like, it's when you're in it, it's hideous. And it can feel never-ending. And things that used to bring me joy no longer brought me joy. And so the way out seemed pointless. Like, if the things that bring you joy don't even bring you joy anymore, then why bother? So it was rough. Like, it was really, really rough. And I'm grateful for being as stubborn as I am. Because that kept me here. And I can see how difficult this is for people. I can see the things that we don't want to talk about. And just know that it gets better. There's a way out. And you might have to keep digging. Keep digging. Not out. Don't dig out. Dig in. Okay? That's where I found my freedom, was within. If you've made it to the end of the video, thank you so much. That was a whole bunch of energy to deal with. So make sure you shake it off, right? Make sure you breathe. Just take a moment to breathe out. Don't take on that energy, it's not yours. If you've learned something from it, that's perfect. If you want me to expand on anything, or if you have any questions, please ask in the description below. Like the video, subscribe, all of the things, but mostly just take care of you, please. Like, this was a heavy video, and I'm glad it's done. Anyway, take care of yourself.